One of the things that we normally go through life is how to deal with grief. Grief. And this can be a big problem to many of us, and sometimes it can end up causing a lot of death, perhaps, and even constant torment, or even pain, deep pain in our hearts. And it can even psychologically affect you forever. So I want to talk to you this morning about how to deal with grief. Because one of the things that I told you last time that I purposed in my life is to be able to speak love to a hurting world. Because I know in life, life has, although many may assume that it's about roses and merrymaking and gormandizing, but even in these beautiful roses, we have thorns in them. So it doesn't surprise me that some of us struggle in our day-to-day life with how to deal with grief, how to overcome depression, how to overcome pain, that intolerable pain. There is a guy who many of you probably know, who acted this movie called Mrs. Doubtfire. And who never enjoyed Mrs. Doubtfire? And little did we know that this gentleman was struggling with a lot of depression and eventually ended up dying or perhaps committing suicide because of grief. Some of you have seen people like Whitney Houston, the great Whitney Houston, the musician, who eventually died because of coke and cocaine and heroin. And so it doesn't surprise me that many times in life we kind of go through these pains, and we look for alternatives of how to deal with this pain. And so if you don't have someone to talk to you right, you can end up hurting yourself. You can end up doing things that are detrimental to your well-being, or even cause people to suffer without them knowing. I also realize that sometimes the way we respond to other people, let it be our children, our wives, or husbands, or friends, may have a lot to do with what is coming out of our hearts. You end up venting. So I would like to share with you some of the stages that you may have to be careful about, even as you go through grief. And grief is brought about by many things. Maybe a loss of a loved one, maybe a financial depression, maybe a love that went wrong, maybe a failed attempt on a number of things, maybe academic journeys, or maybe attempts in terms of business. So it's normal. It's normal that these issues of grief come to us, and people express the venting in different ways, the giving of steam, if you like, in different ways. And if you are not well guided and well, canvassed, you may end up hurting yourself. I've seen people who have attempted suicide on several occasions, and perhaps even this morning you may think about, why don't I die? I have no purpose for life. I feel I have, this issue has hit me several times. It could be a sickness. It could be cancer. Some people have gone through deep pain in terms of diseases, and some of you are living with this pain. You can't even move. You can't even shake. Some are disappointments. You have been disappointed. You've been raped, or you have been abused, or you've been mutilated in different aspects. So I clearly understand what you may be going through, and I would like to share with you some of the challenges. I have made it a purpose of my life to speak love in a hurting world, because I know the world is full of grief and depression. So that's why I have to be very careful when I'm speaking about these things, because I'm speaking to hearts that are broken. I would like to be able to mend your heart, to bring about that unity, that love, that healing that you so much desire. There's a thin line. Most of the people who attempted to commit suicide have chosen to do that because at that particular moment they do not see any cause for survival. They see the darker part, and they don't see the good part, the good part, and it's normal to feel that way. I have heard of instances, for example, where people have broken up in relationships and they have attempted to kill themselves. There's one time I was told a story of a lady. She was telling me of one of her friend. I think the boyfriend found out that she was cheating on him, and he actually found out where they were, party making, and he came with the car and, zeroed down on wherever the corner where they were, and drove the car recklessly to go and hit them against the wall. So you understand how people can be able to handle things in different way. The inability to handle that pain and that depression can cause you to lose common sense at a time, and you end up doing the wrong things that you end up regretting for the rest of their life. If you perhaps interviewed people who are incarcerated right now, maybe in prisons, many of them are there not because they are of deliberate bitterness in their hearts, but because at the heat of the passion, they were not able to take control of those situations, and they were able to vent wrongly, and eventually ended up, having issues. I know many people. One time I was visiting some inmates, some of my clients in Luzira, for example, and I interviewed quite a number of people, including young girls, very young girls, young boys, and told them, "Why are you here?" They said, "We killed a person." And men, you're like, "Wait a minute, what happened? Are you that evil?" He said, "I wasn't that evil, but at the heat of the moment, I took an action that ended up detrimental to my life." So you must learn to control your anger. You must learn to take hold of your emotions. You must learn to understand that grief is also a stage. Whether you've lost a loved one or whether you have been hurt so badly. I have been stabbed several times, and had I not been very wise in terms of churning these negative energies into positive energies by trying to know how to harness them, I would have probably self-destroyed myself. I don't know how many instances I felt like, man, let me just grab this guy's heart, or, strangle this guy's throat, stuff like that. But then the second word comes to me, like, wait a minute, how about if you just walked away? That's what they call winning by losing. They call it winning by losing. It's called a Giffen paradox. Winning by losing. And I keep telling that to you on and on. When the scriptures say turn the other cheek, they were mindful of the fact that there will be pain. No doubt the pain is there. But in the event of turning the other cheek, you are actually being more wiser, more deeper, more smarter than that. And it doesn't mean that you're a fool. It just means that you're taking control of your emotions and you're being wise. Because you may end up being something that may end up affecting you for the rest of your life. You have to be careful. Bodies are made up of quite a number of emotions, and especially if the adrenaline is set on another tone in terms of pacing in your body, it can cause colossal effects. Women are known to be more emotionally intelligent than men. And so women, this perhaps speaks to you in terms of how you address issues and in terms of how you handle issues. And I say that with absolute respect. So grief, as I said, is a very serious issue, and it presents itself in different stages, and therefore we have to be careful and mindful of how we address, and so that we can be able to control our messy emotions and package them in what they call neat packaging. They are emotions are basically responses to perhaps a loss, and in most cases, this loss happens to everyone. Just take an example of what's happening in Turkey, for example. Here is a child who knows the mother has gone for shopping only in 45 seconds. Think about it. 45 seconds, an entire, cycle has changed. And this has affected people's life forever. 45 seconds. The earthquake that hit, in Turkey. And lo and behold, people's businesses are gone. People's mothers are gone. People's fathers are gone. People's lovers are gone. And so what do you expect? How do you expect those people to deal with this kind of tremor, this kind of grief? It happened even 9/11, if you remember, when the planes crashed into New York, into the World Trade Center. What happened? How do people respond to that? How about people dying, you wake up one morning, your loved one has gone somewhere, and then you just hear, lo and behold, something has happened to them. How do you deal with that? That is extremely important for you. And I would like to argue with you and confess that may be extremely painful. There are even times when you may actually doubt the existence of God. And you say, if God had been there, this perhaps would not have happened. I've seen instances, I've seen kids who have come to me for counseling. There is one who particularly came to me out of pain, and he said, listen, I have been sodomized, and I have pain in my my behind, and I am so desperate that no one can give me money. But even the person who did that to me is not willing to help me anymore. Can you find me an alternative? Can you find me another person who who can sodomize me again so that I can make medical attention? Think about that pain and how I don't know, for lack of a word, what word can I use when a person breaks down to that level to you? This is a man telling a fellow man. And he's looking for money to help himself out, but also to help perhaps his girlfriend or children. That's how desperate our life can be. That's pain. One time I met a gentleman who told me that, my friend, when someone tells you, mvamo maso, please comply, because you don't know what they're going through. The gentleman wakes up one morning and they entertain visitors, and they assume they know them because they're speaking the same language, and because they are courteous people. Our African culture, how we treat everyone as a brother and sister. They said, oh, you're welcome, you have a tea, and then okay, let so-and-so escort you. And the wife escorted them, and only to realize that it came to midday, it came to 5, and the wife wasn't coming back. Down the road, the next morning, 24 hours, the man started searching for his wife, only to find his wife body mutilated and dumped somewhere, and the private parts cut off, the breast cut off, the tongue cut out, the eyes cut out. How does such a person survive? How does such a person deal with pain? These are things that I'm talking about, and this can be extremely painful. So I do understand that the world we live in is composed of, if anything, failures, if anything, hurtings, if anything, regrets, if anything, disappointments. You must learn to accommodate yourself in such a world, and you must learn to harness desires, or perhaps present yourself, protect yourself is the word, against such things. The word of God says, guard your heart, because out of it comes the issues of life. If you don't learn to cultivate that in you from the word go, you will be disappointed. You will lose it. You will fail. You'll commit suicide, and you'll put yourself in. You will end up drinking. People who go to things like drinking and smoking weed and cocaine, even my friend, the gentleman we used to like when we were young, Michael Jackson, probably lost his life because of that. Because at the time when he wanted to perform, and he's excited about the fact that he's making another album, this is it, but he couldn't sleep. He had sleep disorders, and because the medicine wasn't working anymore, he probably asked for a little bit of a bigger dose, and in doing that, end up losing their lives. And then of course they accused the doctor for that. The same thing with Whitney Houston, same thing with Whitney Houston's daughter. So depression can be extremely important. You must learn to take control. And I'm telling you this, it's normal for you to feel like, I don't find a reason to live. Let me just rest. Let me sleep. Sometimes the pain can be too much. People go through cancer. Cancer can be extremely painful, So I do understand. And perhaps maybe that's when people could understand what they call euthanasia, mass killing, where people are like, I would rather die than continue with this pain. I have made that argument in my book of the law of penology and criminology in Uganda, in terms of mass killings and the likes. So I do understand. How about kids who are raped when they're young? I do understand. How about people who get AIDS or HIV or other diseases, But when you learn to live positively with those challenges, you will be amazed of how you're going to live longer and live happily, because you have taken charge of your body. It's extremely important. So please listen. There are basically 5 stages that you must take care of when you're undergoing grief. The first stage is, of course, called denial, and the other is called anger, and the third one is called bargaining, and the fourth one is called depression, and the fifth one is called acceptance. So that's basically the framework, and I would go through a little bit of them briefly so that you kind of understand what I am talking about. So denial, in terms of grief, is the first of the 5 stages, and it helps us to survive the loss. Okay? In this stage, the world becomes meaningless and overwhelming, and life makes no sense at this level. So it's a stage of shock and denial. So we go numb. In most cases, we go numb. We go perhaps berserk, and we wonder how we can go on, if we should go on anyway. So we try to find a way to simply get through each day. So denial and shock help us to cope with and make what they call survival possible. It's normal. Okay, I'm just getting through these stages with you. So there is a grace in denial. So it is nature's way of letting in only as much as what we can handle and as much as what we can accept. So you accept the reality of the loss and you start to ask yourself questions. You are unknowingly beginning a healing process, okay? And you are becoming stronger. And the denial is the beginning to fade. But you proceed in terms of your feelings and you deny in terms of the surface of it. So the second stage after denial is what they call anger. Anger is necessary in terms of in terms of healing process. It's like forgetting. There's a gentleman who was the ability to forget is also natural and good, by the way. For your body and for your mind. There's a gentleman who I read about. One of these days, I'm going to take you through the book called Moonwalking by Einstein, written by John Ford, The Art of Remembering Everything. And I've written about it in my other book called Twitter is Malin Frame, but I've also captured it in a number of other books. I'll talk about that at a certain time. But I was telling you about this gentleman who had the ability to remember everything, to remember his colleagues' work schedules, and they were you're working in office, what you're supposed to do, what your boss has told you to do, what your colleague is supposed to do, a little, almost everything about it. This guy ended up dying because his brain didn't have the ability to forget. So it's only normal for you to have that, that ability to forget. But the point I'm talking about here is denial, rather anger. Anger is necessary in terms of healing. So be willing to feel your anger. You see, if you compress your anger within you, then time is going to come where you will explode. You will explode, and you may explode badly. Many people who explode by venting have accumulated this anger, and this has been piling up one by one until that level where they cannot have it anymore, and they boom. It's like a boomerang, It's like a nuclear explosion. So you must learn to take care of your anger. So even if it may seem endless, okay, so the more you truly feel it, the more it will begin to dissipate. So it is okay to feel the anger, the pain. Oh man, this guy has done something bad. This woman has done something terrible. That is normal. That is normal, and it's good for you because you're venting one by one. Some people actually, some of you guys who watch movies, you've seen how these guys handle their anger. When they are extremely angry, they can go on the wall and kick the wall. Kick the chair or break a glass, or even now they have learned it much better. They put punching bags and they go and punch those bags, and that's a way of giving up that anger rather than using that anger against an individual, because you do that and by the time you realize you've hurt someone, and then the law will not be merciful to you. Okay, the long arm of the law will definitely smoke you out. So the more you feel this anger, the more it will begin to dissipate, as I told you, and the more you will heal. So there are a number of emotions under anger, and you will have to get, emotions, and most of them you must learn to take care of them, So the truth is that anger has no limits. It can extend not only to your friends, it can even extend to your doctors, even to your family, even to yourself, even to your loved ones, even to a person who died, So you can express your anger. Something is coming out of somewhere, but you vent on another person, because you're trying to, get rid of that anger without you knowing. So it's natural to feel deserted or even abandoned, but we live in a society that feels anger. So anger is strength, and it can be an anchor. It can give you a temporary structure to the nothingness of loss. And so the first grief feels like being, lost at a sea, for example. and no condition, can be able to bail you out. Then you get angry at someone or at a particular individual because they didn't attend a particular, burial, or they didn't do a certain thing right. So anger becomes a bridge over which you trade on to overcome. Okay, so we have to be very careful. Anger is just another level of indicating the intensity of your love also, by the way. Some you lovers, you get so angry with your partners and then sometimes you may not understand why this guy is so, red-faced against me. Giving what do you call it, a blood wash over certain circumstances. It's perhaps because they love you too much, and therefore they can't comprehend the other side of it. So you must be careful that you have to take care of that, and you have to learn to navigate through it wisely. The third stage is what they call bargaining, and this is basically what people call a temporary truce. If, for example, if I devote the rest of my life in helping others, then I can wake up and realize that all has been a bad dream. So what we can become lost in a maze if only, and if, for example, statements like if, those are aspects to do with bargaining. You are now bargaining. You're making a bargain with your life. If this can happen, then I can do that. It's good also for you in a way because it helps you to kind of give up the pain. So if only this happens, then this can happen. So it can help you to think differently or propel your life differently. So bargaining is another stage that you must take care of. And after bargaining, our attention usually moves squarely into the present times. When you bargain, then you're bargaining, you find that this can happen, then this can happen, then you're now beginning to move into reality. So empty feelings present themselves and the grief enters our lives to a deeper level, and then deeper than what we ever imagined, for example. So those are extremely important. Then the other stage after that is called depression. And this may last forever if you're not careful. And this is a very, very dangerous step, especially in the modern world, where we're dealing with what they call non-communicable diseases. Non-communicable diseases, by the way, end up killing people more than even these so-called communicable diseases. So depression is one of them. And with the people who are in Europe and the likes, those so-called first-class countries or first-world countries, undergo a lot of depression. But even here now, we have got to that level where we go through depression. So, and this can last forever. The most important thing to understand is that depression is not a sign of mental illness. It is basically the appropriate response to a great loss. For example, we withdraw from life and we left it in a fog of intense sadness. Okay, wondering perhaps that if there is any point of going on alone, we begin asking ourselves that, why should I go on? Depression after loss is often seen as unnatural, but it has to be fixed in most cases, and it can cause a snap out. So you must be careful when you're dealing with depression. So the first question to ask yourself is whether or not the situation you're in is actually depressing. And for example, a loss of a loved one is very depressing. Depression is normal and appropriate in terms of a response. So you must be careful. So not to experience depression, for example, after a loved one has died, would be unusual. When a loss finally settles in your soul, then you have what they call a realization that your loved one, perhaps didn't get a better time with you, or is not coming up. So that can be depressing in one way or the other. So in grief, it's a process of healing, and depression is one of the many necessary steps of going through that way. So acceptance is sometimes often confused with the notion of being all right, or okay, or what has happened is not any case anyway. But most people don't even feel okay after all about the loss. So you must be careful. So the next stage after that is acceptance. So acceptance becomes another important and vital tool or stage in dealing with grief, or dealing with failure, or perhaps absolute debacles, if you like. So accepting the reality that our loved one, for example, is physically gone, and recognizing that this new reality is a permanent reality is also important. We will never like this reality. It can never be made okay, but we eventually accept it. It's like learning to live positively with perhaps a disease or age, for example. That you have to understand that is something that you can cultivate within you. And you will be amazed at how long it will give you, propon in terms of life expectancy. And you realize that some of these guys who may have laughed at you because you have accepted your fate, you end up living even perhaps more fruitful life than them, even longer lives than them. And you ask yourself, who is the judge? Those of you who know that movie, The Great Debaters. Who is the judge? The judge is God. Why is he God? Because he determines who wins and who loses, not my opponent. Who is your opponent? He doesn't exist. Why does he not exist? Because God is the discerning force for the truth that I speak. So you must understand and comprehend some of these things in life, that acceptance is extremely important for you. So we cannot maintain the past intact. We have sometimes to accept that, and that perhaps that's what there's a poem that a prayer, I think, by Saint Francis of Assisi, where one of the things I'll say to you one time on another day, where one of the things he says, give me the ability to accept those things that I cannot change, and so that I can be able to live with them positively. And then he said, I prayed, there are things that I prayed for honestly. I got nothing that I prayed for, but I got everything that I hoped for. I'll go one day with you through that in one of our discussions of Let's Think Outside the Box .org, as it were. So those are important things for you, my friends, that please understand that grief and frustrations and embarrassment and humiliation and pain and suffering are part and parcel of life. No one can tell you that they're having a perfect life. Some people vent even with their plastic smiles on, and those can be dangerous, because David was able to see that. David was sick on his bed, and he was praying, and he was about to die, and people used to come and see him, King David. I'm talking about King David, those of you who are Bible readers. And those who were surrounding him were like, oh, King, oh, so bad. But deep within their hearts, they're like, not everyone who comes on your funeral, perhaps your father's funeral, really feels the pain. Sometimes they even grieve more than those who have actually lost their loved ones. So some of them, I just want to come to affirm and say, is it true that this fellow has died? Really? And it's understandable. So David was able to see that. He God opened his eyes and said, Father, have mercy upon me. Because those even who are coming and thinking that they're having sympathy and apathy on me, they're actually, mocking me in their hearts. And only God can redeem you and get you out of that trouble. So my friends, even as we go through life, I want to encourage you. I told you that I'll be your shoulder to lean on. I'll be your anchor to hold on. I'll be your friend. So next time you feel lonely or feel disappointed or feel depressed, just get the call. Give me a call and say, Brother Isaac, my brother, speak something to my soul. And guess what? I'll speak something to your soul, and you'll be able to rise up and fly into horizons that you've never been. You will change. Some of you have heard of Spafford. I think Harold Spafford. I talked about him. He's a lawyer who had actually lost everything and eventually came up with that song that it is well with my soul. When he had lost everything, he was able to conclude and say, okay, I've lost my children, I've lost everything, but it is well with my soul. I'll sing it for you in conclusion. It is well. It is well. We can sing it together, by the way. With my soul, with my soul, it is well. It is well with my soul. When peace like a river attendeth my soul, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my Lord thou hast taught me to say, it is well, it is well with my soul. And in Luganda, some of you know that song in Luganda. Mirembe, mirembe, ja Yesu, ja Yesu, ejoje, jinkumo moyo. My friend, it is well. It is well. It is well with your soul. You will overcome. Never give up. And God bless you.